The night we were told to leave, my sister didn't cry. That's how I knew things were serious. Emma had cried before. She cried when our mom died. She cried when we were moved into our third foster house. She cried when they took away her dog because pets weren't allowed. But that night, when our foster father stood in the doorway and said, "You're old enough to figure it out," she didn't shed a single tear. Instead, she quietly folded her clothes and packed them into a backpack. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and waited for me. I was 17. She was 15. Technically, they weren't supposed to kick us out before my birthday, but adults have a way of bending rules while pretending they're following them. Temporary placement disruption. That's the phrase they used. We were given 2 hours. No yelling, no arguments, no apologies. Just distance. When we finally stepped out the door, we each carried one duffel bag and together had exactly $42. We walked until the streetlights ended. Emma stayed close beside me, matching my pace through the quiet streets. "Where are we going?" she asked softly. "I'm still figuring that out." That wasn't completely true. What I did know was this: we weren't going to a shelter. We had been separated before. Once the system splits you up, getting back together becomes nearly impossible. I wasn't letting that happen again. The idea came from a bulletin board. 3 days later, after sleeping inside an old picnic shelter near the river and stretching gas station snacks as far as they would go, I noticed a paper taped to a corkboard inside the post office. It was a county liquidation notice. The county was auctioning off abandoned municipal properties. Most of the listings were run-down structures the county didn't want to maintain anymore. Old garages, unused storage buildings, condemned offices. Then one listing caught my attention. Former Bryan County substation and holding facility. Minimum bid, $6. There was a black and white photograph attached to the notice. A small brick building, barred windows, and a faded sign that once said Sheriff. Emma leaned closer to the paper. "Is that a jail?" she asked. "Looks like one." "Why is it only $6? "Because nobody wants it." The listing explained everything. The substation had been shut down for more than 10 years. It needed structural repairs, the plumbing was outdated, there were no active utilities, and the building had no commercial permits. In other words, it was a liability. But when I looked at the picture, I saw something different. Thick brick walls, steel doors, security bars, reinforced windows. A building designed either to keep people inside or keep everyone else out. $6 wasn't money we could waste, but we didn't exactly have better options. 2 days later, I stood inside the county clerk's office holding 6 wrinkled $1 bills. The clerk looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "You understand this building isn't considered livable?" "Yes, ma'am." "It's zoned civic. You can't run a business there without rezoning." "Understood." "It has holding cells." "I figured." She paused and studied me for a moment. "Why would a kid want an old jail?" I didn't answer directly. "Because it's solid." She stamped the paperwork. The sound of the stamp echoed across the quiet office louder than it should have. "Congratulations," she said flatly. "You now own the old Bryan substation." The building sat near the edge of town, beside a gravel lot and a rusted flagpole tangled with weeds. Up close, it looked even worse than the photograph. The red bricks had darkened with age. The windows were covered with thick steel bars. The front door was heavy metal, dented but still solid. The sign above it hung crooked, the letters almost completely faded away. Emma leaned closer to the paper. "Is this place kinda creepy?" "It's sturdy." "That's not what I said." I slid the key into the lock and pushed the door open. The hinges groaned loudly. Inside, the air smelled stale, but not rotten. Dust covered everything. The reception desk was still bolted to the floor. Old wanted posters curled at the corners on a bulletin board behind it. A hallway stretched towards the back of the building. We walked down it slowly. The holding cells looked exactly how you'd expect them to. 3 small concrete rooms with steel bars and heavy locking doors. A narrow corridor ran between them. At the end of the corridor was a reinforced door leading into what used to be the evidence room. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. "You're not thinking we live in one of these cells, right?" No. I stepped inside one anyway. Concrete floor, concrete walls, a small barred window near the ceiling. Cold, strong. This place was built to survive riots, storms, forced entry. Emma raised an eyebrow. "You planning on riots?" "I'm planning on winter." Her expression changed immediately. We kept exploring. At the front of the building there was a small office with 2 desks still inside. Behind it was a storage room, and near the back we found a narrow staircase that led down into the basement. The basement surprised me. It wasn't just empty storage space. Thick support beams ran across the ceiling. There was an old mount where a generator had once been installed. But something else caught my attention. Another room. This one had a reinforced steel door. Not like the cell doors. Different. Heavier. The handle was circular and industrial, like something built for a vault. I tried turning it. Locked. Emma stared at the door. "What do you think's in there?" "I'm not sure. Maybe nothing. Maybe. But the fact that it existed at all meant something. Small-town substations didn't store gold or federal secrets, so why build a reinforced vault? 3 weeks after moving in, I finally decided to find out. I brought a wrench set and flashlight downstairs. Emma followed. "You sure?" "No, but I wasn't turning back." The vault door's lock mechanism wasn't electronic. It was mechanical, old school. I removed the outer panel carefully. Inside was a rusted but intact locking rod system. It took 2 hours, but eventually something shifted. A dull metallic click echoed in the basement. Emma held her breath. I gripped the circular handle and turned it slowly. The vault door creaked open. Cold air drifted out. The beam of my flashlight cut into darkness. At first I saw shelves, then crates, then something else. Not weapons, not cash, not old evidence files. Something bigger, something we weren't expecting.
That was the moment everything changed. The vault door opened only halfway at first. Rust resisted the hinges, metal grinding against metal like it didn't want to be disturbed. I leaned my weight into it, and the door finally gave way with a low, hollow groan that echoed through the basement. Cold air spilled out. Not the stale kind you'd expect from a sealed room. Clean, dry, engineered. Emma stepped closer, flashlight in hand. "What is that?" The beam cut across rows of metal shelving bolted into the concrete walls. Wooden crates stacked neatly, plastic storage drums labeled and faded marker. This wasn't random storage. This was planned. I stepped inside. The floor was sealed concrete, the ceiling reinforced with thick crossbeams. 2 large ventilation ducts ran up and out through the foundation wall. This wasn't a vault for valuables. It was a bunker. Emma moved beside me, shining her light into a crate. Inside were sealed emergency ration packs, not expired canned goods, long-term storage supplies. Another crate held water purification tablets and medical kits. A third contained portable radios still wrapped in plastic. I swallowed. "This was an emergency shelter," I said quietly. "For who?" "For whoever needed it." Along the far wall stood a steel cabinet. I opened it. Inside were binders labeled County Emergency Response 1994. I flipped one open. The substation had been designated as a fallback civil defense site during severe winter storms and grid failures decades ago. It was stocked quietly, maintained occasionally, then forgotten when budgets shifted and newer facilities were built. The vault wasn't for prisoners. It was for survival. Emma stared at the shelves. "So we bought a jail?" "No," I said slowly. "We bought a shelter." And suddenly, everything made sense. The reinforced walls, the generator mount, the ventilation shafts. The building wasn't just strong. It was designed to outlast disaster. We didn't tell anyone right away, not because we wanted to hide it, but because we needed to understand it first. Over the next week, we inventoried everything in the vault: freeze-dried meals, blankets vacuum-sealed in plastic, portable propane heaters, medical supplies still usable, battery-powered lanterns, and at the back, covered with a heavy tarp, something even more valuable: a large industrial water tank connected to a manual pump system tied into an underground system. I turned the crank. Water flowed, clean, cold, stored. Emma looked at me with wide eyes. "We can survive anything in here." That was an exaggeration. The brick exterior insulated against wind. The cells functioned like compartmentalized rooms. The basement vault held months of supplies. The generator mount meant we could power essentials, even if the grid failed. The town had auctioned off what they thought was a liability, but it wasn't. It was infrastructure. November arrived with early snow. At first it was light, then heavy, then relentless. The first real blizzard hit 3 weeks before Christmas. Wind gusts howled across Briar Hollow, tearing down tree branches and snapping old power lines. The lights flickered once inside the jail, then went out. The silence that followed was thick. Anna looked at me. I didn't panic. I walked downstairs and started the generator. It roared to life, vibrations steady through the concrete floor. Lights came back on in the front office. The heater fan kicked on. The building remained solid. Outside, the storm intensified. Snow piled against doors. Wind slammed into brick walls. Inside, it was stable. We sealed the main entrance with foam insulation strips and reinforced the lower caps with sandbags from the vault. Hours passed. Then came the knock. Hard, rapid. I opened the reinforced front door cautiously. 2 people stood outside, faces red from cold. The grocery store owner and his wife. "Power's out everywhere," he said, breath visible in the air. "Our furnace died. You got heat." I stepped aside. "Yes." They stepped in, eyes widening slightly at the warmth. By midnight, 3 more families had arrived. Word spread fast in small towns. The community center had lost heat entirely. Pipes froze. The elementary school was locked and unpowered. The old jail, the place everyone joked about, was the only structure with reinforced walls, backup power, and insulation thick enough to hold warmth. We didn't hesitate. The cells became sleeping quarters, each one lined with blankets from the vault. The booking area became a communal heating space with the wood stove burning steadily. The basement vault became supply distribution. Emma organized food rationing with surprising authority. I managed generator timing, fuel consumption, ventilation flow. The building handled it. It was built for it. By the 3rd day of the blizzard, we were housing 12 people, then 18, then 24. At one point, someone laughed softly and said, "Never thought I'd be grateful to sit in a jail cell." No one disagreed. The brick walls absorbed the storm's fury. The steel bars that once symbolized confinement now symbolized protection. For 9 days, the storm raged. Power crews couldn't reach the outer roads. Snowdrifts buried vehicles. Temperatures dropped below zero. Inside the former jail, it stayed above 60 degrees. No one froze, no pipes burst, no one went hungry. When the storm finally broke and sunlight reflected off miles of white, the jail doors opened, not as an abandoned relic, but as the heart of the town. After the roads cleared and power returned, something shifted. The mockery stopped. No one called us weird anymore. No one pointed. Instead, people showed up with gratitude. A contractor donated insulation rolls to help us upgrade the roof. A mechanic offered spare generator parts. The mayor visited personally. "I didn't realize that old substation still had its civil defense supplies intact," he admitted. "Neither did we," I replied. He nodded slowly. "You saved lives." I shook my head. The building did. But that wasn't entirely true. The building was potential. We activated it. Spring came. Snow melted. Grass returned around the old flagpole. We didn't abandon the jail. We improved it. We officially registered the building as a volunteer emergency shelter in partnership with the town. The basement vault was restocked and updated. The generator system was upgraded with a secondary fuel line. We repainted the exterior brick trim, cleaned the old sheriff sign, and replaced it with something new: Briar Hollow Community Safe House. The steel bars remained, but now they represented strength, not punishment. Emma stood beside me the day we hung the new sign. "Remember when they said we were crazy?" she asked. "Yeah, guess we were just early." I smiled. The truth was simple. We didn't buy a jail for $6 because it was cool. We bought it because it was solid, because no one else saw value in it, because when you've been thrown out enough times, you start looking for structures that can't be pushed over. That building changed us. It forced us to take responsibility, to plan, to lead, and turn 2 displaced teenagers into something else. Foundations aren't always pretty. Sometimes they're brick and steel and bars, but if they hold during the storm, that's what matters. The old jail still stands at the edge of that. From the outside, it looks almost the same, but inside it's different. Alive, repaired, respected, and for the first time in our lives, we live in a place no one can force us out of. That's what $6 built.